Guys, in the gaming world, sometimes there are major events announced weeks in advance. Countdowns begin, developers share a small clue every day, and in the end, we watch a 2-minute trailer. Game Science did none of that. Out of nowhere, late at night, they released a full 15 minutes of gameplay from Black Myth, Zhong Kui, and we are not talking about a few prepared cinematic scenes here. In the same video, they showed the new main character, the combat system, different abilities, the beginning of the story, and a major boss fight. I watched the trailer several times, and honestly, what I saw got me seriously excited, because this does not look like it will simply be a better-looking new Black Myth game. Game Science seems ready to keep the things we loved in Wukong while changing many systems, from combat to storytelling. When Black Myth, Wukong, was first shown, some people did not even believe the footage was real. The game looked so good that everyone thought it might be a fake tech demo prepared just to attract attention. Then the game actually came out, and most of what we had seen was really there. It became one of the most talked about, most impactful, and most awarded games of its release year. It reached millions of players, and turned Game Science into one of the most followed studios in the world with a single game. So when the same team announced that it was making a new game, high expectations were inevitable. But there is also a difficult situation here. You can surprise everyone with the first game, but doing the same thing a second time is much harder, because now people know what you are capable of. Zhong Kui's first gameplay video shows that Game Science is not running away from that pressure, but walking directly into it. The video starts in a very calm-looking place at first. There are two characters stranded in an area that looks like an island. One of them is the main character we play as, and yes, this time he is not a monkey. He looks like a normal human. There is also an old man with him. Together, they cut down trees, build a raft, and try to escape the island. For the first few minutes, there is almost no dialogue. The game does not spend a long time explaining what is happening. It expects you to understand the situation through the character's actions and what you see in the environment. In the end, they push the raft into the sea, but a massive wave ruins the entire plan. So before the story even really begins, the game tells us that escaping this place will not be that easy. After that, the old man disappears or dies and turns into leaf-like particles. The main character follows the trail he leaves behind and moves toward the darker parts of the island. For now, the game does not explain who the old man is, but I definitely do not think he is an ordinary side character. Maybe he is someone from the main character's past. Maybe he is a guide leading him into the underworld, or maybe he is a god or spirit hiding his true identity. Because the trailer description includes a poetic text that talks about old friends, dreams, unforgettable faces, and walking once again into the underworld. In another scene, we see a mysterious woman lying underwater. We do not know who she is either. In Zhong Kui legends, his sister has an important place, so that woman could be his sister. She could also be someone else he lost in the past. Right now, all of this is theory, but the feeling the footage gives is very clear. This story will not be a simple adventure where we just cut through a few creatures on an island and move forward. Memory, death, loss, and unfinished business from the past seem to be at the center of the narrative. Now let's talk about the visuals, because aesthetically, this game looks truly incredible again. The forests, coastlines, rain, water effects, character outfits, and small environmental details seem to go even beyond the first game. There is especially one scene where fire spreads through the forest. The main character sets the environment on fire with an attack. The flames spread to enemies and trees, and then he pulls that fire directly into himself to cover his sword in flames. So this is not just a beautiful looking effect on the screen. We are seeing an environmental element become part of the combat system. Later, there is also another scene where lightning power is added to the sword. If this system works as freely as it looks, we may be able to transfer fire, lightning, or other forces of nature from different areas into our weapon. That could allow us to approach each encounter not only through dealing more damage, but through deciding which element to use. The combat system is not the same as Wukong either. In the first game, we used a staff, performed fast combos, and relied heavily on dodging at the right time for defense. Here, the main character has a sword, and the combat looks heavier, more controlled, and much more focused on parrying. The character directly meets some attacks, redirects others, and immediately counterattacks after defending. More importantly, he does not respond to every strike with the same animation. He counters a heavy overhead attack in one way and a sword strike from the side in another. This may sound like a small detail, but in parry systems, it is very important. Because when every attack triggers the same block animation, combat starts to feel artificial after a while. Here, you actually feel the swords clashing and the characters reacting according to the weight of the blow. There is also a meter on the bottom right side of the screen that fills as you attack, dodge, or successfully parry. Its official name has not been revealed yet, but it could be an improved version of the focus system from Wukong. Most likely, we will build energy with normal attacks and activate stronger sword techniques or special moves. There are also scenes where the main character uses objects that look like paper talismans. These could be used to seal enemies, summon elements, or control spirits. At one point, a creature is summoned into the battlefield, and later the main character seems to merge with this being. We do not know exactly what is happening, but we may be looking at a more advanced version of Wukong's transformation system. Still, we need to be careful here. The trailer shows a spirit summon and fusion, but that does not mean we will be able to capture every demon in the game and add them to our collection. Then comes the big boss fight of the trailer, and this is where game science really shows itself. We are facing a winged, humanoid, strange creature that attacks while constantly twisting around as if it has been stung by a giant fly. I am not saying this in a negative way. The boss's movements are designed in an unsettlingly good way. You try to understand what it is going to do, but its body moves at such strange angles that it is not easy to predict where the attack will come from. As the fight progresses, the creature tears off its own wings and moves into a second phase. Then a mysterious ally joins the encounter. The main character merges with another power, and the tempo of the fight changes completely. When the camera work, parry animations, elements, and the boss's movements come together, it looks less like an ordinary gameplay encounter and more like a well-crafted action movie. The first game already had strong boss designs, but Zhong Kui could push that side even further. So, is this human we are playing actually Zhong Kui? I think this is one of the most interesting questions in the trailer, because the Zhong Kui we saw in the first announcement video in 2025 was a large, bearded, terrifying-looking, almost divine figure riding a massive tiger. The character in the new gameplay video looks younger and completely human. The strongest theory that comes to my mind is that we are playing Zhong Kui's life before he became a god. In Chinese legends, Zhong Kui is an extremely talented scholar, but because of his appearance, he is denied the position he deserves and takes his own life. After death, he becomes a powerful being who punishes evil spirits, controls ghosts, and protects people. Maybe the game will directly tell us the story of this transformation. In other words, the young human we start as and the king of ghosts we saw riding the tiger could be two different forms of the same character. This theory also fits the main theme the game has announced. Game Science said Zhong Kui will not be based on one specific Chinese novel, and that life and death will be at the center of the story. This is actually a very important change. To fully understand Wukong's story, you needed at least some basic knowledge of Journey to the West. Characters would sometimes appear, talk about things that happened in the past, and the game assumed you already knew them. For Chinese players, this may have had a clear context, but some Western players had a hard time following the story. Game Science is aware of that. With Zhong Kui, they want to tell a more direct, easier-to-follow story that players all over the world can connect with. For themes like life, death, loss, and justice, you do not need to read a 2,000-page Chinese classic beforehand. There are still big questions about the structure of the game. At the end of the trailer, we see the character riding a large, tiger-like creature across a wide landscape. This could be a sign of a real mount system, and if so, the areas may be much larger than Wukong's. But it would not be right to look at one scene and say, Zhong Kui is definitely open world. Most likely, we will see larger, connected, semi-open areas that allow more exploration. One of the most criticized parts of the first game was the invisible walls. You would see a path in front of you that looked like you should be able to walk through it, but the game would not let you go there. Game Science says it wants to fix its past shortcomings and regrets in the new game. I hope this is one of the first things they address. Because in a world that looks this beautiful, constantly running into invisible walls really kills the desire to explore. When I look at the technical quality, I think the level studios from Asia have reached should worry Western companies a little. Black Myth. Wukong was one of the biggest examples of this, but it is no longer alone. Phantom Blade Zero is another game people have huge expectations for, and as someone who personally played its demo, I am expecting a very strong project. When you look at other projects coming from China, like Blood Message, some scenes could easily make you think they were made by Naughty Dog. The visual quality, animations, combat choreography, and presentation level have reached a completely different place in just a few years. 5 or 6 years from now, we may not be waiting only for big games from America and Europe. Maybe a significant portion of the most anticipated games of the year will come from China, South Korea, and Japan. The rise we are seeing right now makes me think that. But there is also a small danger in this rise. Most of these games look incredible, but in terms of theme and gameplay, they are slowly starting to resemble each other. Dark mythology, realistic forests, a sword-wielding character, timed parries, massive creatures, and multi-phase boss fights. All of these are great features on their own, But when every studio starts using the same formula, players may eventually say, again? I also want to see more shooters, different sci-fi worlds, cyberpunk games, stories set in modern cities, and completely unexpected genres from Asia. Because their technical talent is no longer up for debate. The real test from this point forward will be turning that talent into truly different games. Zhong Kui does not seem to have fully solved that yet, but with its demon control ideas, drawing elements from the environment, and its story between life and death, it has a chance to create its own identity. As for the release date, we will need to be a little patient. Game Science has not even given a release year yet, and it specifically said the footage came from an early experimental build and development. The game is being developed for PC and main consoles, but which PlayStation or Xbox models it will release on has not been announced yet. People online are talking about 2028, but that is not official. They are only making guesses based on Wukong's development time. In my opinion, 2028 is the earliest realistic possibility, and I would not be surprised if the game slips into 2029. Still, the fact that they can already show 15 minutes of gameplay at this level is very promising. If the final game keeps everything we saw here, reduces invisible walls, makes the story easier to understand, and adds enough variety to the combat system, Game Science could sit at the center of the gaming world for a second time. These are my first thoughts on Black Myth, Zhong Kui. Right now, the thing I am most curious about is whether the young character we control is really Zhong Kui, and whether we will transform into the bearded king of ghosts we saw in the announcement trailer as the game progresses. What did you think of the new gameplay footage? Do you think Zhong Kui can surpass Wukong? Or are these dark mythology and parry-focused games starting to look too similar to each other? Definitely write your thoughts in the comments. If you do not want to miss new gaming news, trailer breakdowns, and story theories like this, do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Take care, and I will see you in the next video.